Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation, anxiety management, and of course, resilience. We're on our journey of resilience. Now, I had some questions from previous episodes over the past few weeks on some of the traps that we fall into. There was one episode specifically that I was talking about some of the subtle things with the emotion and problem focused strategies. So I'm just going to address a couple of those sort of the subtle maladaptive strategies that we adults, whether we're parents or teachers, even professionals, sometimes allow kiddos to do that really aren't helpful. I know that I've done parent trap episodes in the past, but this is specifically looking at the emotion and problem focused strategies that I really wanted to address today. I know some of these subtle patterns can be really tricky, but we need to remember that we're there to support kids, right? So, of course, we're going to be vigilant about protecting them from anything that's overtly harmful, right? So, if they're using any coping strategies, for example, that are, creating self-harm or putting them into a cycle of some sort of addiction, we're going to address those ones, right? Those ones are obvious. I don't need to address those ones because they really do lead to long-term negative effects, but so do the subtle ones. So I'm just going to recap some of the subtle ones that we let kids do all the time, even though they lead to just as harmful outcomes anyways. So I think that it's way easier to say, well, of course I wouldn't let my kids take drugs, just to run away from their feelings. Okay, well, why are we letting them run away from feelings in other ways too? Yes, that's it, it's definitely a bigger deal maybe in our minds, but this is just as important. They can also have those long-term consequences. So we need to think about what we need to do instead. First, I've talked a lot about it, overprotectiveness. We often prioritize our children's safety and well-being, which is definitely important, but it can turn into this overprotectiveness. There's a fine line that we cross over. It's not helpful at all. So shielding them from potential harm, yes, whether it's physical, emotional, that's really important, right? We can make sure that there's nothing abusive and traumatic. If we can if we have the opportunity to do that, we're going to do that. So when we're doing it though, when it's just everyday situations, right? Any like just normal bumps and bruises and rejection happens, especially with kids, making decisions that you don't think is necessarily the best decision for them. I mean, we're just going to be crippling them. Anything that we do just to prevent any distress or behaviors, it's really going to hinder their development, hinder their independence, hinder their problem solving skills, their emotion regulation skills, and of course, their resilience. Whenever we're overprotective, we're shielding our kids from everything. It's just leading to anxiety, to a lack of self-confidence. They're going to start to doubt their ability to handle challenges on their own. I mean, that's what anxiety is. I can't handle it. I always need an adult there. So, what should we be doing instead? Well, I mean, I talk about this in so many of my episodes, but it's really, we want to encourage kids to engage in age appropriate independence tasks, decision making, right? We got to make sure that they're learning from their experiences. We're going to build that self confidence. The example that I often give is, if it's cold outside and it's snowing, we might have to let them go out without their ski jacket. Obviously, there's a line. If it's immediate frostbite and they're gonna go into hypothermia, obviously we're gonna put our foot down. Those are our red lines. We need to know what our non-negotiables are. No matter what, I am jumping in if I'm seeing this happen. Don't have them all over the place, just have a couple of those. Another one is rescuing them from those consequences, even natural consequences, the outcomes that are naturally, following whatever their behaviors are. They're natural consequences for a reason. They need to learn them, right? It's a very powerful learning tool. It's helping them understand the impact of their actions in a real world context. That's how we learn, is through experience, not through us telling them. Why would we want to rob children of those really important learning opportunities, right? When emotions get in the way, and it's usually our own heartstrings, but when any emotions are in the way, we as parents and even teachers and other professionals, we feel compelled to rescue the kids. We want to shield them from disappointment, from failure, for distress, for upset. But again, there's long-term pitfalls whenever we're doing that. If we're continuously rescuing kids from consequences, They're never going to learn from their mistakes, first of all. They're never going to take responsibility for their actions, second of all. It could foster a sense of entitlement. It could foster a lack of accountability. I often think even just little things, the day-to-day things. If you've ever watched Inspector Gadget, he's just going happily, merrily along in his world, making messes all over the place. But Penny is there cleaning up, either creating a beautiful path for him to begin with or cleaning up after him. He's never learning from what he's doing. He's never learning. He just thinks I am fantastic and everything works out perfectly, right? So, no opportunities to learn. And when we're looking at emotion regulation and resilience, no opportunities to manage those uncomfortable feelings. So, we really do need to let kids face the music, face the appropriate consequences for their choices. We need to make sure they're learning from those experiences. Of course, that's important. We're not going to say, I told you so, right? That's not the way to do it, but they are learning from that experience. Bummer, kiddo. You went outside, you didn't take your jacket, and you had to stay inside at recess. What do you think we should do for today? What do you want to do today? Oh, you want to go outside. Okay, what do you got to do differently? Right? We're going to ask those open-ended questions, and then they can take responsibility for their actions. Oftentimes, I see kids who are always blaming. They chose not to wear their jacket, but they're going to find some reason why it was their siblings' fault, right? We don't want to get into that. Another great example really is homework assignments. If a kiddo is repeatedly forgetting to do any assignments, yeah, they're going to get a low grade. They might even fail, right? I actually just went to parent-teacher interviews last week, and my eldest, she's in grade 12. Okay, she's in grade 12, so high stakes here. When she does her work in class, 100%. She gets 100%. Literally, so far, she's gotten 100% on everything. However, her average is only 80. So we're like, why is it that her average is 80 when all of these things that you've shown us, she gets 100? Well, it's because she hasn't handed in any of her assignments. So yes, there is an ADHD component. So I need to work on that ADHD component. But, a lot of parents will get caught up in their own anxiety that their child is going to fail. And so they might start getting on their case. They're making sure that they do it, right? Their kids are never learning to do it themselves and initiate it themselves because their parents are always there prompting them to do it, right? So I see that a lot where parents are taking ownership of making sure it gets done, or they're doing it themselves. I see that happen more at the younger ages, right? But we're modeling really bad habits here, and we're crippling their independence to learn the skills. What is the skill that they need to do to learn to initiate it on my own and get it done on my own? That's so important, right? You can talk to them, right? That's fine. But as a guide, we're not going to prompt them and nag them, right? Be like, hey, kiddo, I went to parent teacher interviews. I saw that these assignments aren't done. Let me know. I've got some ideas, some strategies to help you, whether it's managing your time, getting started on things, organizing things, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I can't control the outcomes. It's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage this? It's no skin off my back. I don't care if she doesn't get it. Be great for her because she's going to get more scholarships the higher her grades are and the higher her average is, right? But she's got to get that buy-in. It can't come from me, right? I am here as a guide. I'm here for some ideas to support you if you need it. But if they continue to neglect their work, we got to let them face the natural consequence. Maybe she will get that lower grade and not get all of her full, Rutherford scholarships. Here in Alberta, we have Rutherford scholarships, right? Maybe, yes, they'll fail. Maybe, yes, they won't be able to graduate with the rest of their friends. Now they have to take summer courses if they still want to go to university. Or maybe they have to take another year, right, to finish up and upgrade. They need to learn that. But then, boy, what a great learning strategy for university. Before we're pulling them through university and it's the same thing. And then now we're pulling them through work and now they're getting fired. Are you going to be over their shoulder all the time? Right? It's going to cost you way more tomorrow than it is today. I'm always talking about that. Then afterwards, if they do fail, we're not going to lecture or scold or I told you so. If she doesn't do her assignments, hey man, it's an ish her, not an ish me, this issue, right? It's really, she has got to look at this for her own self, right? Now, if she does fail and then is upset about it, it's like, I'm not going to go to her and say, well, I told you, I was there. We talked at parent teacher interviews, right? That's on you. No, we're not. They've already been punished, right? So to speak, right? They've already had that natural consequence. We don't need to impose anything else, right? We're just going to disrupt our relationship. We're going to validate. That sucks. Oh, We validate their feelings. I know that you were really wanting that scholarship. I know you were really looking for that grade. And if they don't care, well, then we got to tolerate our own emotions, right? So if they are, though, we are going to validate, but then we're going to reflect. We're going to focus on the learning of the experience, right? How is this situation now going to help them in the future? Bummer, kiddo. You didn't get the Rutherford. Maybe there's some problem solving here. Okay, so now you thought you were going to get that 1500. Now you're not. What are you going to do? How are you going to solve this? How are you going to pay your tuition now? You're banking on that money, right? Moving forward, we can continue to offer our support. We can continue to offer any resources if they want them. So, hey, kiddo, let's think back what happened in grade 12. You're now in university paying, for your courses. And just, I make sure that my kids pay just because then if I'm paying, they don't care. It's no skin off their back, right? But if they're having to pay $500, $600, $1,000, it's a lot of skin off their back. So they're in it, right? If they really want to. So we're going to see some of that motivation. But then I can say, hey, how can we set you up for a successful semester? I'm here for you, right? I have half an hour window, some point today. That's all we need, or it's sometime this week, right? We can wrap things up at the end of the day. We can talk later on the week, whatever it is. We're not going to rescue them from the consequences of their actions. They need to learn those things. Children learn best from their own experiences, facing the consequences of whatever their behaviors are, their actions. It helps them understand the importance of responsibility, of good decision making, right? And through that learning, they're going to develop resilience as well. They learn that they can overcome whatever the difficulty, whatever the challenge is, and that they have the skills to do it, or at least the resources or the support that they can seek out, right? That failure, it's not a failure if you're learning from it. So experiencing those natural consequences also teaches kids, that their actions have impacts. Now I have to pay the full amount for my first semester of university. Now I have to sit inside with none of my friends who got to go outside because they all brought their jacket. So that understanding really fosters that sense of accountability and personal responsibility. And most important, we're facing discomfort. We're facing disappointment. Kids are now learning to manage those emotions, which is so important. That skill is crucial for emotional intelligence and healthy coping strategies and everything that I talk about. So again, we are important guides in these experiences. We are providing support, reflection opportunities. We're not rescuing them, right? That's really important. They have to learn those valuable life lessons themselves. They're never going to learn from our wisdom, our own experience. Yes, we have developed hindsight and foresight. It's kind of like, one of the Greek myth, it's like we're all part of the Greek mythology where we can see what's happening, but we have no capacity to do anything about it. They have to learn their own, right? They have to develop their own hindsight and foresight. That's really important. So same thing too when we're jumping in and providing solutions to everything immediately, right? Yes, we have our own stuff. Yes, we might have fantastic ideas, but if we're swooping in, right? Maybe there's other things too. Maybe we do have fantastic ideas we just want to share. Maybe we're on a tight schedule, right? We just need to get out the door, so I'm going to keep everything calm. Let's just go. Maybe we get uncomfortable when we see our own kids in distress, and we just want to alleviate that distress really quickly. But if we're constantly offering those immediate solutions, we're only undermining their problem-solving skills, their resilience. A lot of the time, they start becoming reliant on other people for solutions rather than developing their own abilities. So instead, we really need to encourage kids to think critically, to problem solve on their own before seeking assistance. Or we're going to be asking open-ended questions to help them through that process. We're guiding them to explore potential solutions rather than jumping in with immediate answers. Now, I know I've talked a lot about this, but excessive comforting, reassurance, that's a problem as well, right? Of course, we want to be able to comfort our kids when they're upset or distressed, but when we're excessively reassuring them or soothing them or trying to distract them from their feelings so that they feel better, I mean, all of that's just going to inhibit their ability to self-soothe, to self-regulate, right? That's all important things that we want them to do. They're never going to learn how to cope with those emotional, elements that come up physiologically in our thoughts and our behaviors, whatever that distress is, they're never learning to cope with it. So instead, we're going to validate Again, validation comes through everything, and it's through our validation they are going to feel supported and comforted, right? We're not taking all of the pain away and we're not going to problem solve for them, but because we're, validating that I understand you, this is hard, but I'm also showing confidence that I know you can manage it. Right? What are you going to do? That's where the open-ended questions. What's next? What do you need? We're teaching them to use their internal resources to figure out what it is they need to do to cope with the situation or to cope with their emotions. So we're encouraging them to express their feelings. We're discussing them openly. All of that is really helpful. It's never tough love, though. Sometimes people hear me, they think I'm saying tough love. No, we're caring, we're empathetic, we're supportive, we have a strong attached relationship, right? We do that through the validation. That's really important. So I see people, not validate at all, and they're just telling kids, they're kind of swinging to the other end. They're not validating, and they're just saying, toughen up, you know, you don't need to cry. It's not a big deal. Be strong, right? Whenever a kid's getting distressed, it's just a cookie. It broke into two. Here, you have both pieces. It's not a big deal, right? We think that that's, going to help them cope. It's not. It's essentially emotional suppression, and there's so much research supporting that's not helpful. It's only creating more emotional difficulties, more mental health issues in problems in the future. It can prevent kids from seeking help, whenever they need it. It's hindering their emotional growth. I mean, there's just so much. We don't want to suppress those feelings. We need to teach them it's okay to express their emotions. If our prefrontal cortex is online, we're obviously going to see the situation very differently. It might not be a big deal to us, but conversely, I'm sure there's big deals to you that other people are like, why are you freaking out? It's fine, right? So we're encouraging that open communication about our feelings. Now, sometimes we have our own discomfort, so we're going to avoid discussing some difficult topics, uncomfortable topics with children, maybe to protect them from distress that we think they're going to feel, or maybe our own distress or discomfort. But avoiding those difficult conversations, again, it's hindering their ability to develop effective communication skills, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, all of those types of things, which are going to lead to anxiety. And then anxiety about addressing sensitive issues. They're never going to know how to bring up those sensitive issues. So again, we're going to engage in age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate discussions about whatever the challenging topics are, right? Think about what's uncomfortable for you. Let's talk about it. Get comfortable, normalize it. We're emphasizing open communication, active listening, empathy, non-judgment. All of those things are really important. Rigid expectations are also a problem. It's good to have high expectations, of course. We want our children to succeed. We want healthy well-being, but we need to be careful that we're not pushing them to excel academically, athletically, in their extracurriculars, socially, or whatever it is. Those rigid expectations can lead to a lot of chronic stress, to perfectionism, which is just a killer of mental health, a fear of failure. It can push them towards burnout. It can really, in the future, it hinders that healthy work-life balance. So we want to make sure we're helping kids set realistic goals. We're going to let them pursue what they're interested in, right? We're going to recognize any setbacks and failures and things don't go their way. That's part of the learning process. Of course, we're going to capitalize on those learning things. Piece of this too is that social media, which just makes this constant comparison a major problem. And it's definitely a problem when parents are inadvertently comparing their children to other children, right? As a means of motivation. It's not usually to hurt our kids. It's trying to motivate them, encourage them. I hear parents saying all the time, I don't compare my kids, but their sister, ba 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 ba, or their brother, ba 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 ba. It's these sly little comments, about one child's performance, whatever it is, on their effort in their homework, their performance on their ice, whatever it is, we're implying that your child needs to work on those things, even if you're not directly explicitly saying it. But that constant comparison can really damage a child's self-esteem, their self-worth. They're going to feel inadequate. They're going to have lots of self-doubt. They might even have some jealousy. Not anything that's going to help with their resilience. So we got to focus on the child, their own unique strengths, their own efforts, their own areas to work on. We're comparing their own performance from one day to the next. And we're going to celebrate their own unique strengths and successes, right? And really foster their self-worth and self-acceptance based on, their unique context. I see a lot of inadvertent dependency traps when we're always swooping in to support our kids, to fix things for them, right? Again, we don't want to do that because we're hindering things, but we're creating those dependency traps. But I also see parents who enjoy feeling needed too, right? And this has happened. I have worked with people when we really dig down, like what's going on? None of the normal strategies are working, and we're realizing they enjoy feeling needed, right? They enjoy that attention that they are getting from their children because they don't have whatever they need. Their needs aren't being met. So we really want to focus on this so we're not unintentionally fostering that dependency, even if we don't mean to. It's just going to hinder their development. They're, again, not building confidence, self-sufficiency, problem solving. It's just going to cause more problems as they get older. So we can encourage age-appropriate independence, self-reliance. We are the providing that guidance and support as kids become more self-sufficient and making their own decisions, learning from their own experiences. Just on this point, I mean, there's so many ways that we can encourage independence and self-reliance. Doesn't matter how old they are, even at 1 year old, we can focus on things like basic self-care tasks, making basic, simple choices, exploring their environment. Toddlers, we're going to give them some options. What outfits do you want to wear for just school today, right? Maybe they can start taking over basic things like washing their hands, brushing their teeth, putting their toys away. As they get into preschool, they're going to do more complex self-care things, basic chores. They can start problem solving a little more. They can start feeding the pet. I know for my girls, I had them sorting. They could put utensils away because they could easily sort those things. Maybe they can set the table, even helping with, making snacks or a little bit of gardening. It just instills that sense of responsibility. We can encourage them to think of different solutions to problems that they come up with in their everyday life. What happens if a toy isn't working? Well, we can check the batteries, right? We're going to model through the different problem solving steps. How do we share toys with our friends? We're guiding them through the thought process too, even in our own things. Oh, shoot, my mouse isn't working. Okay, so what are some things that I can do? I can make sure that it's the right mouse that's paired with my computer, make sure that there's, we can talk out loud all of those different things. We want to foster a love for learning. We're allowing them to choose their own books, their, educational activities. We're supporting their curiosity. We're giving them resources. We're answering their questions. As they hit elementary, we really do need them to start taking academic responsibility for their homework and projects. Maybe we're going to help establish a routine, but we're allowing them to manage their time and their tasks with minimal supervision. We're there if they need it, but they're the boss. Right? They have to learn to navigate their own friendships, right? Their own social fires, friendship fires. We can help brainstorm ways to handle situations. We're there to validate, it's really hard. What do you need? How are you going to fix this? Let's brainstorm some ideas. I've got some ideas if you want them, but let's look, what you've got. They got to manage their own social conflicts on their own, really, right? We need to give them opportunities to do things on their own, to go places on their own. As they hit those teenage years, we can expect them to take even more ownership over, any complex decisions in their life. They can start learning financial responsibility. They can start budgeting and saving, earning money, right? There's lots of different things. They can be involved in important family decisions, their own life choices, which high school they go to or which high school courses. Maybe they can't choose which high school, but which courses, what university, what extracurricular activities they want to do, right? Their career paths. We are encouraging them to solve any complex problems independently. We're only offering guidance as they ask, but we're asking them open-ended questions. We're there as guides. We're kind of like the contractor. They are the boss of their own life or of these parts of their life. We can't make them do anything, but we can offer input just like a contractor would. But it's up to them to take it up and try it. We're going to give them the space to try, to fail, to learn from their experiences. I just want to end on a note about adults forgetting their own self-care as well. Just because, for us to be able to do all the things that we need to do, whether we're teachers or professionals, mental health professionals or parents, it's really easy to forget about our own self-care, right? And I will admit, even this morning, right, I had so many different things that I needed to get done that I didn't do my workout. And that's a rarity for me, but I'm really feeling it today. It really makes such a big difference. So I scheduled a bit of time to go right after this. But I needed to get this done too, right? There's sometimes do take over. Generally, though, that never happens. But we do need to start prioritizing, our own well-being before we can prioritize other people's well-being, even if it's our own kids, right? If we've got nothing to give, we can't do the things that we need to do to make sure that they're happy and healthy. So if we're neglecting our own self-care, we can lead to our own burnout and stress, even as parents, which is going to affect, the kids' well-being. We're probably modeling unhealthy coping patterns for them as well. We want to model self-care behaviors for them. We want to emphasize the importance of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our physical needs, our emotional needs. When we're looking at this journey of resilience, we need to remember that our well-intentioned actions can sometimes inadvertently reinforce those subtle maladaptive coping patterns, but it's harder to do everything in, healthy adaptive ways when we're burnt out. So we, yes, need to look out for those inadvertent things that we're doing that could be making things worse, but we need to look at ourselves first. How are we doing first? That's so important. So, these are just a few of the questions that I received, and I knew that this episode was really important to recognize some of these patterns and, just knowing that it really does make things harder tomorrow and every day. So, as you go through, what were some of those things that really jumped out at you? How can we promote independence, problem solving, emotion regulation? That's what's going to help our kids, be empowered and develop their resilience. So really, that's your takeaway. What is a trap that you're falling into yourself? It could be a self-care piece so that you're not able to regulate your own emotions to co-regulate for kids. But what are some of those other traps that you can get out of? That's so, so important. Thank you for joining me today, right? So think about those traps, start doing the opposite even. If you're doing them already, fantastic. Maybe just looking for opportunities to allow your kids to stretch out a little bit, right? More opportunities to do something for themselves that they, don't necessarily do for themselves. I feel like I've been rambling a lot lately, probably because I didn't work out this morning. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Help those kiddos be bold and courageous, and I will see you next time.